I want to say a couple of things, one about nonviolent training and its importance, and the other about hope. My nonviolent training story goes back to the famous march on Washington that came to be called the Armies of the Night. I was the chaplain at Cornell and went with the students. We stopped in Philadelphia for nonviolent training. When we marched in Washington, I think mostly soldiers and paratroopers had surrounded the Pentagon because we had every intention of going down somewhat like Kanye West and all the military, or all the religious people did today, and levitating and praying at the front door of the Pentagon. It was clear that the military was surrounding the Pentagon so that we could not do that. I was with the Cornell students who had nonviolent training, but they really hadn't had caution training, and so they broke through the line of military and charged with about 2,000 other students toward the doors of the Pentagon. The doors of the Pentagon opened, and Marines with fixed bayonets emerged. Every one of those people that had nonviolent training sat down. And so the crisis, that could have been incredibly bloody, violent, and historical, ended at about 4 a.m. when it was so cold the troops wanted to go home and the students decided to go back to their buses. I want to say something about going into the face of potential violence with people who are trained to know what to do in the face of that violence. I think it's as important as it ever was then and still is today. Now, my quick story of hope. One of the most violent and dangerous things that happened at Cornell campus made the cover of Time magazine, and that was when the African American students took over the Student Center and held it for about, I think, 2.5 days. One of the fraternities tried to liberate it by breaking into the student union and were fought back by the African Americans that were in the building. And the African Americans at that point got rifles and bullets and had themselves armed and ready for any confrontation with anyone that tried to take them out of that building. The president of Cornell spoke about trying to be patient. There were negotiations went on. I was invited to go and talk to the parents on parent weekend of the fraternity that tried to break into the staff, into the straight, and told them about the rights of free speech and protest, and that was what was going on. The hopeful part of all of this is that some people thought it was the darkest day in Cornell's history. Some professors were ready to leave their posts, and many of the people on campus felt that the African American students that took over and then marched out with their bullets and their guns right to the front door and to the rest of the campus should have been punished and expelled. They were not. The Cornell president was almost fired over that incident. Where's the hope? 40 years later, I got a call saying that they were going to be celebrating what they celebrate every year, which is the black takeover of the state, the straight, at Cornell. It's the eyes on the prize thing that's happened at Cornell that is now looked back on and celebrated as one of the great moments in civil rights justice on that campus. And they asked me to come back and march. And so was I surprised to see the new president of Cornell show up at the African American Studies Center in order to march first to the women's co-op where a cross had been burned in the yard the night before the takeover, and then back to the building that had been occupied for a picture on the steps of the straight with all the people from the African American Studies Center that aren't only just African Americans but Native Indigenous peoples and people from other countries. And then they had a discussion and a panel afterward. The last thing I want to say is that one person asked me, how do we get the campus to be doing this kind of thing now? The students seem to be dead and not interested. I said, well, it's even interesting that one of the things that this country loves is 50th anniversaries of things. And so we have a whole decade of the 60s that are now 50 years old. So every single issue that was raised, every protest, every march, every challenge, you can re-celebrate and remember and reactivate. So I felt hopeful. about something that was nearly a tragedy in my life there.